So again, just want to welcome everyone to this webinar today on the MICIP dataset templates. I think I know most of you. For those of you whom I don't, my name is Ben Bork. I'm the manager of the MDE statewide system of support and the MICIP lead for professional learning. And as Terry already has done, I'd also like to thank the team that put together today's presentation, including today's presenters. And so you see their names on the screen right now. So we have Lynn Batchelder and Alicia Hoppa from the statewide field team, as well as Terry Nugent from MDE, who serves as the MICIP lead. Just a couple of housekeeping tasks. So the link to the folder for the materials is in the chat, and these will also be available on the MICIP website. We're hoping by Friday, April 23rd. As we go through today, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll be monitoring them as we go. There will also be opportunities throughout the presentation to pause and answer questions at that time. So I think that's all we need to do before we get started. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia.
Great, thanks, Ben. So just to highlight a few of our outcomes for today, we really want to give you an opportunity to understand the user experience when using the dataset templates. So we'll kind of walk you through those pieces. And then we also want to spend some time helping you understand how to create dataset templates. So the creation process as well as the submission process, because we're hoping that all of you will help contribute to the dataset templates that already exist. And then we'll have a little bit of time just to allow you to engage in both of those processes, experience it to make sure that we don't have any questions. So those are our broad outcomes. And then you'll see that the agenda really just follows right along with that. So we'll spend just a few minutes here at the beginning going over a few pieces of key vocabulary. And then we'll walk you through so you'll know what that end user perspective is. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time really thinking about how do we go about creating dataset templates and how might you support us in doing that. So again, just connecting, you're all super familiar with this, this graphic and the process. We're really, and we're thinking about today, our focus is really on that assessed needs pieces. So all of our work with the data sets and the dataset templates are really going to fall into that assessed needs category. And again, more familiarity. We just want to, again, trying to frame where we are today. So here's all of the details of the assessed needs process. And again, when we think about kind of where we're living today, it's really going to be in that data discovery. So we're really thinking about how might we best support districts as they identify what academic, non-academic, and systems data that they will utilize, what do they see, and all of those pieces. So those are all of the steps, and just know that today our main focus is really living in that data discovery section. So these are the pieces that might be a little bit new. So the vocabulary that we will be referring to and interacting with a little bit today. So we wanted to provide this, and then we'll explain a few pieces. And then as Lynn takes us through the creation process and the end user, you'll be able to see where these data or these vocabulary pieces connect. So just a few, the data object, right? So that's a single set of data. So an example might be a benchmark assessment. So, you know, your iReady placement by grade report. That's how we would refer to a single set of data. The data set is a group of data objects that we utilize to conduct data analysis. So if we're thinking that same example, if I have my iReady grade placement report for mathematics, I might also bring in any unit assessments that I have for mathematics. I might also look at any walkthrough data or curriculum implementation data that I've collected. So when I put all of those data pieces together, all of those data objects, that's what we call a data set. And then the data set template are those pre-built pieces. So utilizing all of you, the experts in the field, to help guide districts on what might be a data set that they might consider when they're digging into maybe mathematics. So that whole piece that I just gave to you, we might propose to a district, these would be the data objects that might build a really powerful data set for you to look at. And that's what the template creation process will hopefully help to do. And then again, you know, we know that the data set feeds into that data story when we think about the data analysis initiative inventory and the gap statement. In our work, we're also going to be highlighting this idea of focus areas, because we will invite you to think about, as we're thinking about data objects, what would be the focus area of that data set template. So the key focus areas are academic, non-academic, and systems. And then with each of those, we also have a sub focus or a sub area. So that would be, if I'm an academic focus area, the sub would be ELA, math, science, college and career ready, etc. So knowing those pieces and having you all think about and assigning data objects to those key pieces will just help in the creation process. So those terms are included for you as well. The last terms that we'll have you think about as we're creating data set templates are really thinking about primary and secondary data objects. So again, remember that we're really trying to guide districts through this process and give them a hand as they're thinking about data analysis. So within the template, we'll say, what would you consider to be the primary data object? So in the example I was talking about, it might be that iReady grade placement report. I might call that my primary data object. The secondary data objects would be something like that walkthrough data. So as I'm digging into my causation, what would be an additional data point that might help me determine cause? So that we would call that a secondary data object. So when we get into the creation process, you'll see where we will invite you to really help us think about primary and secondary so that we can guide districts in why would I want to look at this piece of data and what might it help to tell me. Terry?
Oh, I am so sorry. I thought that, Alicia, I thought you had one more slide. All right. So here's some ideas that looking at, we're going to look at the data set template and through the eyes of the user. So we're going to start with their experience first to help you put into context what we're going to be asking for all of you if you are going to choose to create data set templates. So here with we're asking to look at these 3 sources, and so why do we want to create this? And it is because you work in the field with supporting your districts, and it is there's no one that knows exactly what districts are really looking at through your guidance. And so today we're going to have an opportunity, and I hope that you see that the way that one will create data set templates will definitely give the perspective that you have been coaching your districts through all the good work that you do. So let's go ahead and let's look at the data set template and start with the very beginning, which is data discovery. And so here we are in the MICIP platform, and on the navigation bar, we have, this is where MICIP is not a linear process, very organic. And so you can jump through this navigation bar as you see fit. But for today, we're really looking at discovery. And so looking at discovery, then you break down into 2 parts. First is going to start the data analysis. And this is really where we're going to focus today's presentation. But below that is the root cause. So here we're looking at this, clicked on the screen, and as the option, you're seeing 3 things actually here. The first one is, and let's not advance yet. The first one is to create the custom data set. This is where a user could come in and start with no guidance at all and begin to pull data as they see fit. The menu that you see here with certain, we call this the landing page, is where you can go and see the work that the plans you either started or already published, and you can jump into their data stories immediately. But today we're going to focus on the bottom part, which is the data exploration template. And this is where we're going to help the field guide them through the focus areas and the sub-focus areas to say, what is it that you're really thinking about for needs or strengths in your districts to begin your area of inquiry. So we're gonna jump into that right now, and you'll see that we have 3 areas of focus: academic, non-academic, and systems. So if we take a closer look in here, we'll see the non-academic. You'll see the subcategories that are listed under here. This is where we begin to organize for the field the data set templates. And so you can see here that now we have selected school culture and climate as an area where we may want to begin our area of inquiry. So from here then, that will expand. So I don't know if you can see this clearly, but there's a plus sign that are attached to each of the data set sub-focus areas. And that is meant to be what we call an accordion file. And so you can expand that. And then underneath here, we see we have about 5 data set templates that focuses in on this particular topic. So for today's presentation, we really want to then, let's pick one and dig into it. So if we could, thank you. We're gonna look at this one that says rates for chronic absenteeism. Do they vary by subgroups? And I just wanna stop and really think about what that title is about. So if you are in MICIP at all, and you know that if you go into something like My School Data and you grab a report, it gives a generic file name. In fact, all of the My School Data comes back with some type of MSTEP title. When you're creating yours, we want to make sure that the user has a title so they really know what they're about to explore. So here's an example, and we're going to go deeper into this area. So here you'll see once the user clicks on that data set template, the data objects are now here. So these, of course, going back to Alicia's quick vocabulary lesson, this is what we call the data set. And then each of those tiles are the data objects. So here you can see that there are several here that is recommended that would help the user understand the multifaceted nature of looking at chronic absenteeism. And so just looking at this and not being able to read it, you should be able to note 2 things. One is 2 of these tiles actually connect to My School Data. And the rest have those little cloud. That is a symbol for a district to upload data from their source or their local source. And so here is where where our district, if right now, especially if a district isn't into the data hub yet, if they have data that they want to bring in, they can do it here, or we're going to have the option for the data hub hopefully relatively soon. But we're going to click on this first one, which has to do with perception data. And so when we click on that, then this is what the user will receive. They will see the screen, and there's a chock full of information here. So we start with the title of the data object, and then it gives you under the upload a file to fulfill the data object prompt. There is verbiage here that explains to the user why this is important. And here is where your expertise and guidance are really key, because this is what we want the user to think about why this data object is important. Now, you need to note that when a user brings up a pre-made data template, they may not choose to use or may not have available all the data that's here. So the more we can provide guidance in like this pop-up here, it's really essential. And then we also have categories for our data. So is it, for example, is this the sources listed as MyFi, or is it from iReady? Is it NWA? And in this situation, this fits the category of other. So, so that is what's listed. And then below, the question is where can this information be found? And this is very important that the user go in and explain to, say, future viewers of their plan how the data was found in their system. Because I don't know about you, but there's sometimes where my filing system fails me. And so we want to come in and make sure that there is a pathway for the user to describe where they have retrieved the information. And then below that is a very simple drag and drop box. So if they want to take the object that is being requested through this prompt, that they can drop it into there, or it's kind of tiny, but there's a little hyperlink of select files. So they can click on that, browse, and find that in their system. Before we go on, I just want to point out one very important piece, and that is the text that is at the very bottom. Want to remind everyone that student information is not permitted in MICIP. This is only district and building level only. So the PII, or the personal information here, we want to make sure that the user remembers, do not upload, like, for example, an NWEA file that has kids' names on it. That is, we do not want that. That would be a violation of that rule. So from here, then we can, yes, and we can move on. And I think Lynn's going to talk to us about the creation process for MICIP.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry.
Yep.
So Heather put into the chat a link to a folder that contains the PDF of our slide presentation, as well as a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet actually serves as the template that you will be using throughout this creation process. So as I click through my screens, I encourage you to possibly have that spreadsheet open as well, if you can finagle your monitors in your viewing area, so that way you can kind of walk through the spreadsheet along with me. So this is an example of a completed spreadsheet. So you'll notice on your spreadsheet that you have open, you have 3 tabs. You have a blank spreadsheet. You've got this example, which is the template for rates for chronic absenteeism. Do they vary by subgroup? And then you've got another tab that says, please do not touch, because that's all of the fields for the drop-down arrows. So as I walk through this, you will see where those things that you're plugging into the spreadsheet will actually show up on the end user's experience. So the very first column of the spreadsheet is the title. So you can see that it's asking for, what is the name of your data object? And you're allowed 81 characters to be pretty thorough as you're thinking about what that name would look like. You're being asked to use a naming convention with the title of it, the type of data that it is, the time frame that it is referencing. You can use a full sentence if you would like as you go through that. So as you can see, the first one says district. So it's district data for current year, it's chronic absenteeism, and it's considered demographic data. So you can see I've got demographic, I've got some systems level data, I have some perception level data, I have more perception data, I've got more perception data, and then more systems data. So you can see that we have several different types of data within this data set to be able to support districts as they're thinking through their problem solving process. So as I take a look and highlight the school climate survey for perception data, you can see that when it's created over on the MICIP platform, this is what it's going to look like on the MICIP platform. You can see that, well, I'll dig into those in just a second. The next column is, where should this data object originate from? So you have a pull down list of options for where that data can originate from. It ranges everywhere from My School Data, My Data Hub, Swiss, Student Information System, your student grading system, IDEX, Munetrix, and the good old important district determined, in case where you're pulling that data from is not on that pull down drop down list. So when you choose that data, again, you can see that that's going to pop up over here underneath source. Since we originally had the word other there, because other is just a really great term to be able to use, and we decided to change that verbiage to district determined. So in the pull down sheet, it'll say district determined, and that's what it will then eventually say over on the MICIP platform. The next column is, how can this data object be found? So for anything that's My School Data or My Data Hub, we are asking that you give specific directions as to the filters that you would be using. So you can see, like for the current year chronic absenteeism report, we'd go into My School Data by school year, by report category, and then you want to take a look at snapshot versus trend. This is going to help the people who are actually creating the templates within the MICIP platform to be able to follow your path as to where to find that data. over on the MICIP side, for anything that's district determined, again, as Terry had mentioned, the district is asked to type in where that data object could be found. So that way that can support future users of the system to know, oh, that's where they got this data. They went to this system, it was housed in this Google Drive, and I was able to pull this report, or however they're going to delineate that information. The last prompt, Terry has referenced a couple of different times. Why is this data object part of the data set template? And notice that there's a sub prompt underneath that. That sub prompt is highlighting and supporting the district and really thinking about what is the purpose of that data object? Why would that district consider using it as a primary or a secondary data source? What are some guiding questions that might support the districts in thinking about this data object and what might be considered? So as ISDs, as we're facilitating those conversations in the district, it would be like, what is the think aloud that you are going to help the district team think through? So this is like that written think aloud. What are those processing questions that you want district and school teams to consider as they're evaluating that particular data object as it relates to the entire data set? Again, where that information is showing up is up here on the MICIP platform. So you can see exactly where that district, as they go to upload their file, some thinking prompts that they might consider. There are two columns that are some additional columns. The report name, again, those are for only My School Data or My Data Hub. So if you know the exact name of the report that the creators of the data set templates in MICIP platform can go reference, that would be the name of the report that they're taking a look for. And again, what filters might be in there to be able to support them. So we noticed that when we were asking for the districts to upload their data, and it asked what were the prompts to be used. Unfortunately, when the pre-populated data is in there, such as My School Data or My Data Hub, pre-populated data does not come to this particular screen. And with that being said, we still want districts to have the availability to have those processing prompts. So on the tile, they will have an opportunity to be able to click on the eye. And once they click on the eye, that is where that prompt is going to be showing up. So this one happens to say this demographic data is used as a primary data source to determine district-wide attendance rates, and by subgroups, data can help the district determine the percentage of, et cetera, et cetera. And that was as it related to that particular report that was coming from My Data or My School Data. So again, one more time that you can see that as you are completing each column for each data object as to where that's going to appear within the MICIP platform. The fields that don't show up on the MICIP platform necessarily are these fields up in the upper left-hand corner. So we are also asking for you to type in or choose from the pull down arrow which ISD that you're coming from, or MDE, and then also replace the contents of this cell with your last name and first name. Again, so that allows MICIP dataset creators on the website to come back and reference you in case they have any clarifying questions as they're actually doing the creation of it. It's also asking you for the title of the data template as a whole, as well as the focus area, which was academic, non-academic, and systems, and then what that sub area is that Alicia referenced. Down at the bottom of your spreadsheet, you're going to see that you have 3 tabs. We are also asking for you to please name your tab that you're referencing. So on the chronic absenteeism tab, you'll see that it was called non-academic chronic absenteeism because it was relating to the focus area as well as the sub area. So I'm going to pause at this time and ask the group if you happen to have any questions. Go ahead and utilize your raise hand feature, or just feel free to unmute yourself.
Lynn, I'm in that first column. What's expected to go in there for time frame?
So the time frame, that would be like a current year or trend data.
Okay, thanks.
Great question. Thank you, Anna. Any other clarifying questions?
Hey, Lynn, I have a follow-up. This is Jan.
Hi, Jan.
So are you saying you put the exact current year, like whatever the date is, like 2021?
No, you would put in like as the data set template is being created.
Oh, okay, it's a template, that's right, okay.
They need to know, are they going to be taking the snapshot of the current year data, or are they going to be taking a snapshot of the trend?
Okay, and then like when a district would use that template, they might name it with their own current year to customize it so they know.
They would, yes, they would have the option to edit that field.
To edit that field, okay, thank you.
Mhm. Great question. Any other clarifying questions before we give you an opportunity to play?
Then there was a question in the chat about whether MICIP would accept Google links or other hyperlinks when stating where the data object can be found.
So within the spreadsheet, I'm going to say no. And the reason why I'm going to say no is because when you are creating your data set template spreadsheets and uploading, when they get uploaded into the MICIP platform, that is for all of the state of Michigan to have access to. And so if you're putting links in there, those links would have to be accessible to anybody who's accessing them.
Mhm. Also, I have to say, who asked this? I think it was Mike. We are looking at the future release to have the possibilities of Google links. So right now it's the PDF that we will accept. We cannot accept spreadsheets, but I believe we can accept pictures. So JPEG files are allowable in that area.
Thank you, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Any other clarifying questions before you get to go in and play?
Terry, can you repeat that last part? It can or cannot accept spreadsheets.
Cannot. So the main file that we suggest is a PDF upload, but we also, I know that that you can put like a graphic in there, like a JPEG. It will accept that too. So if you're in a meeting and you know it's a whiteboard kind of situation, you take a picture, you can upload that as a data object, but it can't accept anything other than those two sources at this time.
Any other clarifying questions? My assumption is once you have the opportunity to go in and play and work with a small group of colleagues, that when you come back that you might have some more clarifying questions as you dig into the process. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Alicia?
So in a moment, breakout rooms will open up. So Heather has just randomly put you into some breakout rooms so that you can, Lynn, will you adjust your screen? I'm seeing a dual with the agenda planner, so it's not very big at this moment.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So Heather will put you into some breakout rooms. You have the link to the spreadsheet template. It's a view only. So right now, just make a copy so that you can actually edit it. So just invite somebody in your breakout room to make one copy, because we just want to allow you to kind of talk through and think through how you would complete this template to submit a data set template. We want you to be able to practice it. So when you go into your breakout rooms, you know, have somebody make a copy, talk through these. For now, we're just going to say, think about your focus being on literacy, right? So if your area of inquiry is around literacy, what would be some example data objects? And then how might you complete each one of those columns for that data object around that specific data object as you're building your data set template. So again, this is just an opportunity for you to make sure that before you walk away today, you know how to complete the template and that you don't have any other clarifying questions. So we will open up the breakout rooms. And again, you can kind of see what might be those data objects. And then you will have to kind of talk through as a group, what might we name it? Where does it originate from? Are there any filters? And then the prompt. I think the prompt is just so key because it really allows us to kind of support the thinking of the field, kind of like if we were right there with them. So practice with some of those pieces. And then we will, if you need help, don't hesitate to say, like, request help. And when we come back together, we'll capture any questions that you have. And if we don't get to them all today, we will make sure we send a follow-up email with those. But hopefully this will give you enough time to play that you can kind of get a feel for these pieces.
Ask one question before we go into breakouts. So is there already like a set of topics of data sets that you're wanting assistance with or already created? Or is it just thinking about this of like any kind of data set that we've utilized in school improvement before? I'm just curious.
So for this particular practice, when you're in your breakout room, we'd like for you to focus on this particular scenario. That's a literacy scenario, and thinking about what might be those data objects that would reflect those factors in terms of implementing overall student achievement. When it comes to creating data set templates on your own that you're going to be submitting to MDE, more than likely, you're going to start with data sets that you're familiar with, that you're using with your districts in your region, and start creating those pre-populated data sets so that way your districts will have less thinking that they need to do on the back end, that they can just come in and use the data sets that have already been created for them. Does that help, Emily?
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So in the chat, the copy of the slide and the scenario has been copied into chat for you. And then as Alicia said, your goal based upon that scenario is to think about as a group, what data objects might you put in, and then start actually filling out that spreadsheet, having that conversation. Oh, if you get that far. I mean, obviously we know that the more important thing is the conversation, but we also want you to engage with the spreadsheet as well. Any clarifying questions regarding your task? Okay, Heather, we're going to ask that you guys take about 15 minutes in your breakout room to have this conversation. You are more than welcome to like raise your hand and let us know that you need some help if while you're in there and you want one of us to come into your room and either answer any clarifying questions or help you think through the process.
All right, I'm just shoring up a couple rooms and then I'll open them up. Some people have left, so it wreaked a little bit of havoc on and I just don't want anybody to be left alone. So if you do find yourself in a room all by yourself, please come back out and I'll get you to a place, unless you like to be by yourself, which I totally get. Okay, all rooms are open. If you need support, there's a call button for you. We'll be hanging out here in the main room, and we'll see you in 15.
There's some interesting room configurations.
Yeah, I noticed that. Oh, Krista was going to come. Oh, that's nice.
It was a real wild ride there at the end. People kept leaving. And so I had like 6 rooms that had 2 people in them.
Oh, geez.
They probably had great conversations too, sometimes easier.
So Alicia, watching our time, we have, if you give me 3 to 4 minutes, so I'd like to end be honor one's time at 3:30. So that's all I need. Right, people are coming back.
Great. So welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that provided you an opportunity to play a little bit and think about the parts and pieces that go into kind of submitting this data set template. So we just want to give you a moment and ask you to use the chat feature, sharing any noticings or wonderings, and then also questions that you might have. So we have a few minutes. We're making sure that we're going to honor time. today, but then we'll also notice that if there are questions that we didn't get to, we will follow up with you on. So I'm just going to pause for a moment or two and just say any comments that you have and or questions, please go ahead and populate those into the chat feature.
Need to clean up that blue mess. Then you need to figure out what we're going to do with your chunk of air. I'm just going to
Alicia, are you recommending that we respond in the chat as well, or do you want us to verbally respond?
I think if we're tracking them, go ahead and verbally respond, and then just know if we don't get a response to yours, we will follow up with the whole group.
Okay, so I'd like to address Jennifer's Fox's question. This is really going to be a field-driven development. Okay, so the ISDs should be working, you could be working in groups, you could be working in isolation. It's really, it's a matter of the starting point, as Alicia has mentioned, is really where your district's type of data that your districts are working with. So start with your area in mind. But the state, the state will not be taking the lead on this. The state is only going to be uploading your data set suggestions, and I'll go over that in a minute about that that process.
Terry, could I follow up with another question then from your response real quickly?
Sure.
Thank you. So the question then is, so this template will be in the MICIP platform. If I'm at Jackson and someone's at Calhoun, that will be edited and I can see what Calhoun does and they can see what Jackson does. Is that correct? That's how the open.
If you share, I mean, we're gonna, so the template, the blank template will be available on the website. So everybody will have access to the same materials. So if you're going to then say coordinate with another ISD, which is great, you'll have to figure out the way for you to do that sharing.
I know, and one more follow-up question, Terry, I'm so sorry. So I know that some groups like the ELA group throughout the state of Michigan, the mathematics group, had been working in MICIP to develop some strategy bank. You know, we've been learning about the strategy bank and putting things in there as well. Is there any, does anyone know, would this be work that more of those groups might take on, or is there a data group that would work on this, knowing where to find the reports, knowing, I just think it feels like we're all kind of shooting at the same barrel. How could we do this work in a more collective?
Right. So because we're at the very beginning of all this, we have nothing populated in that data set template. It's really wide open. And eventually, like you said, Jennifer, the suggestion of how to coordinate this and work together, I think that will come over time. So what I'd like to, we have about 5 minutes. Let me just go ahead and let's go into our next slide about the data set template process, because that might, Jennifer, help with some of your questions here. So here is what we're thinking about in terms of the process. And as I've mentioned, you want to start with what have you been focusing on with your districts? That'll help guide you with creating of a data set object. So from there, then you would send your spreadsheet to Rennie at NDE. He's the one that will ultimately be uploading it into the MICIP platform. But you should know that there's some differences, and as Jennifer had mentioned the strategy bank, and I'm glad you did. There are differences between strategy bank submission and data set template submission. So with the strategy bank, we know that if a district uploads a strategy, then it's only viewable by that district. And then if it goes to the next level, which is the ISD level, then it's viewable from the ISD and all their supporting districts. And then of course, from there it's the state level. Where MICIP with the data set templates, everything that's created and then uploaded into the platform is statewide view, so anyone can take advantage of the experiences that are being shared through the data set template. With that said, though, these will be reviewed. So in fact, I will be reviewing the data set template to make sure that it's clear, there's no missing information, that the naming convention is basically followed. It's before we upload it. So we don't want to use the term vetting per se, because there's no judgment call for the submissions. So when you get it in, I'm looking to make sure that it's clear, that I know, like, for example, when you provide the filter information to go into the My School data, that we know exactly what files that are there. The other thing we're also looking for is then, in the off chance that there may be some duplication of data set templates, that we don't want to upload things that are just almost identical. So we will hope to have like many under each of the sub-focus areas, and they may be similar, but nothing that we're looking for is to be exact. So these two areas, I just want to make sure that you know exactly what the process will be. You will receive communication when you submit your form. We will acknowledge that we've received it. And then from there, if there's any questions, then we know who to get back to ask for that. And then it'll be uploaded. If we could go to the next slide, then communicating to the field, that's going to be really important. So we're looking at here, the resources that you have. These are some good resources here on the website. You'll see that in the process guide, if you have any questions about data set template, there's a section in there. Also, next Friday, we will have all these materials on the website available. So those will be for all of you to use. So from here then, in the next steps, we've already have 14 data set templates in the three focus areas that will be going up right in May. Anything we receive from you, as soon as we get it in, it's one of those that we'll vet, get back feedback, get back to you, and we want to get it in as soon as possible because the districts really need that. You should also know, we're hoping in the beginning of August, there'll be more data integrations coming in. So things such as like IDEX or Metrics, they will be integrating with us with reports. So that's another source of data set connections. So when that happens and you realize that maybe, for example, CEPI is working I think over the summer to get MiFi data up as visuals, and it'll be able to pull that icon in, then we'll do a search of the data set templates that look for uploaded sources of MiFi, and then come back to those creators and say, hey, now we can do it live. Let's make sure we have the right view of that data. Lastly, when a series of data set templates are available, we will be communicating that to the field through the continuous improvement process and through continuous communications. So with that, there was a lot of information today. We appreciate you all coming. Here is our contact information. We are here to help. So please feel free to reach out to any of us to ask questions. We will go through the chat and make sure that your responses, you will receive responses from that. And we thank you very much for coming, and we want to honor your time. And just a minute over, but that's pretty good for all the information we shared today. Thank you to my team for presenting. I'm so grateful to all of the things you do. And thank you for those who attended today for the good work that you do to support our students here in Michigan. Have a great day. Thank you.